You are listening to the Manument Podcast. My name is Casey, and I'm here with my buddy Glenn Johnson, investment advisor and founder of Jabez Financial right here in the Uncasville area. In every episode, he is here to break down today's biggest retirement worries and headlines for us. All right, shall we dive into some retirement talk, Glenn?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Let's do it. All right. A recent survey by AARP found that 88% of Americans over age 50 say Social Security is important for a financially secure retirement. One of them is Marilyn Jones, a retired 87-year-old grandmother who lives in Las Vegas. Let's take a listen to Marilyn.
Social Security became something that I relied on. I have a small savings account and I have a very small stock portfolio. I think that's too glamorous to call it a portfolio. Social Security has helped me a lot. Almost $1,800 of my Social Security goes for utilities. People my age look forward to the years when you can retire and you've paid into this fund that's supposed to take care of you in later years.
Now, Glenn, of course, Social Security is an extremely important income stream in retirement. So my question for you is, can it be paired with another type of income stream that's going to complement a client's needs and their lifestyle?
Absolutely. You know, it's not that people need $1 million to retire or $5 million or whatever it is. What people need is the income generated from whatever assets they've collected over the years. So as we move towards financial independence, it's not just about accumulating dollars. It's a matter of building assets that will spill off enough income to afford you the lifestyle you want to live. And those assets could be anything. Well, first, let's start with the definition of an asset. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket every month. A liability is something that takes it out. It's all about cash flow. So when collecting assets, they could either be a Social Security payment, a pension, massive assets in the market, annuity payments, business royalties, income properties. It can be any number of things. But going about getting the financial education you need to accumulate the type of assets you want to manage. See, whatever assets you have to thoroughly understand how they work so that you can have realistic expectations. Because disappointment comes in when our expectations don't match reality. And it's that spread. So as we increase our financial education, we eliminate the potential for disappointment. So that's how when we go through collecting assets, like I said, it could be any number of things. Some of my clients, they thoroughly enjoy collecting income properties. Others, they're purely interested in having a few good stocks that pay a consistent dividend. Or some want a mutual fund portfolio or an annuity payment, or they're expecting assets to be inherited or gifted to them. It could be any number of things. And there isn't one that's all good or all bad. It's a matter of understanding what's a good fit for you.
Yeah. Well, so retirement, it's not just about crunching numbers. It's about enjoying the freedom to live your life the way that you've always dreamed, whether that means you're picking up a new hobby or you're traveling or you're spending more time with the grandkids. I mean, just thinking about the possibilities excites a lot of people. So I wanted to ask you, Glenn, you were just mentioning different clients like their portfolio set up in different ways. So can you share a story about someone who successfully combined their Social Security with another income stream that fit their lifestyle and their goals, maybe to help them with that travel or help them support the grandkids, or whether that's downsizing or, finding a new hobby in their retirement?
Well, I guess my parents would be a good example of that.
Okay.
My dad was a truck driver, and he, like we talked in an earlier show, how he was driving an 18-wheeler full time up until the age of 82.
Yeah.
Because
that's
he
crazy.
thoroughly enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
But there reaches a point where you no longer want to have to be doing those things. And so in my parents' case, like I said, this was back in the day when you could have a job for a long time, and being part of the Teamsters Union, he had his pension. So when my parents retired, their house was paid off. They had a pension. My dad's Social Security check and my mom's Social Security check was the equivalent of half of my dad's. They had some money in the bank, but they weren't investing in the stock market. And things were okay. But they never took any vacations. They never did any they never did lots of traveling. We went camping every summer up in New Hampshire at Big Rock Campground, and that was always something to look forward to every year. But it wasn't until I got together with them and started looking at, okay, well, what is it that you have here? You've got a house that's paid for. You've got cash in the bank that's not doing anything for you. What can you do? And so we spent some time together and I got to show them how they could use their assets to set the example on how to really enjoy their retirement years. And once we were able to discover what their resources were and how they could most efficiently use them, my dad started going back to Sweden. He took several trips to Sweden.
Oh, amazing.
They went on countless cruises together, and they started vacationing, and they went through a tremendous amount of money, and they thoroughly enjoyed it while they were young enough and healthy enough to do it. And I remember telling my mom, I said, you know what? If you're on your deathbed and you have a quarter left in your hand, swallow it. She loved that. Now, I know that's not everyone's objective,
right?
But they got to live out their lives as best as they possibly could. And I didn't need their money. What I benefited most from is seeing them thoroughly enjoy their retirement years to the fullest. And sometimes that's the best example we can set.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do you think him driving for so long is what kept him going? You think that kept him young?
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. He was always working and always being productive to max capacity. He never pushed himself to injury, but he always did as much as he could do. And that's the point, is when you're living a life and you're putting in as much effort and you're doing all that you can when you can, and you're not just consulting your feelings like I don't feel like it, but you're actually living your life to the fullest, day by day, moment by moment. When the day comes when you can't do so much, you don't miss it, because you're not, the regret is not seizing the opportunities when you had them. But if you live your life with a mantra of, seize the day, carpe diem, do the best you can with what you've got in this moment. When the day comes when you can't do so much, now you can enjoy the next season of life, not regretting not capitalizing on opportunities of the past.
Absolutely. I think that's a great reminder that a retirement plan is truly about funding that lifestyle where you can go out and live your life the way that you want to. A well-constructed plan can help you turn your dreams into a reality without that anxiety of wondering if your money is going to last you. So if you're listening and wondering how to make your own retirement dreams a reality, Glenn would love to sit down with you and have that conversation. 860-288-9977 is how you reach us. And we just want to remind you that our first 5 callers today will receive that introductory conversation with Glenn. He can help you move from worry into action with a proactive plan for your retirement. So that number again, 860-288-9977. We're excited to see how we can help, but you have got to make that first move. Our number for you one more time, 860-288-9977, or we are also online at jabezfinancial.com. All right, Glenn, when we talk about the risks of retirement, we're usually referring to the outside forces that can eat away at your money. Those include market risk, longevity risk, health risk, and some others. Now, there's another risk that MarketWatch.com says should be on your radar today, and that's political risk. This involves the changing of retirement laws and taxes. Now, recently, Congress eliminated the stretch IRA and a Social Security strategy called File and Suspend. Today, the headlines talk about how Social Security could cut back your benefits and that the Roth IRA could be in danger. So I wanted to talk to you about this, Glenn. Is political risk more of an issue today than it has been in the past? And how are you dealing with this with your clients?
Political risk has always been there. In fact, all kinds of risks have always been there. But because things are changing faster than they used to, risk has become riskier. And this is where it's because things are changing faster than they used to. Think about driving. Do you remember when the speed limits across the country were 55 miles an hour? And if you were going 80 miles an hour, that was crazy. Well, now sometimes you have to go 80 miles an hour just to stay with traffic.
Right. It's dangerous to go any slower.
Right. I remember going for the longest time, for actually most of my adult life. Normally, sometimes people would look down and go, oh my gosh, I'm going 80. I used to look down at the speedometer and go, oh, phew, I'm only going 80. So things...
Life in the fast lane.
That's right. But I was comfortable there. And so for me to be driving at 80, 100, 120 miles an hour in the right car, I'm perfectly happy and perfectly comfortable and at peace. There's no anxiety involved in that. Now, that said, a couple of years ago, my wife has convinced me to slow down. So
Okay.
I can't even remember exactly when the last time I went over 100 miles an hour was, and it used to be a daily thing. But
Oh my gosh, Glenn, 100.
Oh my gosh.
Now you're talking crazy.
Funny story. When I first got my NSX like 20 years ago, I went out for a ride with my neighbor, and we had the windows down, and we were going up the highway, and I'm watching the speedometer, and I crossed 150 miles an hour, and then I couldn't look down anymore. Then he looked over and saw it hit 165. We were approaching a couple of cars, and I started to slow down. And he's like, "Oh, no, keep going." Now, keep in mind, he was a police officer, so I kind of had my get out of jail free card in the car with me. And I went by a few cars going over 100 miles an hour faster than them. It was remarkable. It was an incredible experience. Now, I haven't gone that fast since.
Glenn, you guys can't see me if you're listening, but my jaw is on the floor. Glenn, they send people to jail for that. I know you were with a police officer, but they would have sent him to jail too.
I know. Well, like I said, that was a long time ago. I've got that out of my system
shocked.
now. And
I didn't know you had such a lead foot.
thank God I'm here to tell the story.
That's right.
Well, my reasoning and my logic behind that, and this is where when we rationalize, we can tell ourselves rational lies. I always told myself, well, I've never had a drink of alcohol in my whole life. I've never smoked a cigarette. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do any of that stuff, but I drive really fast all the time.
So you got to take a risk somewhere.
Right. But that's where I was comfortable. But like I said, I've wised up since then, and I have slowed down. I'm far more reasonable.
Okay, good. Good to know.
But going back to the amount of risk we're experiencing, whether it be in the market, political risk, interest rate risk, financial stability risk, there's all kinds of it. When we consider the fact that as things speed up, just like cars are faster, we have to pay closer attention. And that doesn't mean just because things are going faster, they need to be more risky. But our education has to increase faster than our speed of economic change. Take like a pilot. Now, a pilot, they're flying at hundreds of miles an hour, yet it's still safer to fly than to drive. Why is that? Because they're paying attention. They're educated. They're more competent when they're piloting a plane, and they have a co-pilot. So the faster you go, it's almost like if you're flying a prop plane, you don't necessarily have a co-pilot. But if you're flying a jet, and you've got passengers on board, you've got a co-pilot. If you're flying forward with your financial future and you've got your family in that plane with you, it's wise to have a co-pilot.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. You mentioned we've got to pay closer attention, Glenn. So I wanted to ask you, for folks planning for retirement now, or maybe someone's already enjoying their retirement, what do you think are the most important things that we need to be keeping an eye on right now?
One is actually paying attention to what it is that you have, and is it still appropriate? A lot of times, well, for example, when people start out with a particular portfolio at one stage in life, they get some good advice, they set it up, and then for the next 10 years, they're living their life, they're saving, they're still doing their thing. Well, what was appropriate and suitable at one time, as things change, it can soon no longer become appropriate or relevant. This is where, as you know, and it's funny that I meet with clients and they say, boy, the older you get, the faster things change. Like time's speeding up. Months click by, then years click by. And now that we look at a decade, and 10 years doesn't even seem like all that much when talking to some people. Whereas as a child, 10 years, you're talking more than a lifetime.
I was having this conversation recently where it's like when you're a kid waiting for your birthday, it feels like a lifetime. And then as an adult, the birthday comes and you're like, I swear yesterday was just my last birthday.
That's
and it's
right.
because, as you get older, you're having more birthdays, time flies by way quicker. Whereas, when you were a kid, a year was just a lifetime to wait.
Right. And so with things changing, they don't just seem like they're changing faster. They are changing faster. And they're going to continue to change faster. So what we do in the meantime is we have to pay more attention to what it is that we have. and then realize that an investment allocation that was appropriate when we were younger, and an investment allocation that was appropriate when the economy was in a different secular cycle, it may have worked then, but it doesn't now. When you're young, you see a pediatrician. Then when you get older, you see an internist. When you're on your way out, you're seeing somebody else. There's different seasons in life, and we need to be getting the right counsel at the right time. And because of that, I'd like to invite you to give us a call. Give a call to 860-288-9977 and just introduce yourself, leave your name and number, and schedule a time to get on my calendar so that we can have a conversation. I'd like to find out at what point, where are you in life? What are some of your objectives? And if you'd like to have a conversation surrounding about the allocations of your investments, we can do that. But let's start with getting to know one another and have a conversation about how things are economically and put a plan together so that you can take actionable steps that will position you to live the retirement you want to live and not just live the retirement you have to accept.
You do not want to miss out on this opportunity that Glenn is offering you today. And I want to emphasize again, there is no commitment attached to this. There's no obligation. This is just a conversation, but our spots will fill up. So go ahead, give us a call, 860-288-9977. We will find you a spot on the calendar for you to sit down with Glenn, get those answers that you have been looking for. That number for you again, 860-288-9977. Or, of course, you can connect with us online anytime at jabezfinancial.com. And that's Jabez, Jabez. All right, so Glenn, stocks are still clinging to their record highs. That's why you may have heard some in the financial news talking about a possible major pullback. But Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson disagrees. He tells CNBC that we're at the beginning of a new bull market. Take a listen.
The sell-off in April was really a final capitulation to a bear market that began last summer. If you actually look at most stocks, they topped in July of 2024. They were down anywhere between 30 and 35% on average. I mean, that's a proper bear market that ended with a capitulatory price action. Most bull markets don't last 4 months. They last, a year or two at a minimum. So I think right now we're in buy the dip mode because we're in that bull market mentality. And that's really going to be contingent, in my view, on when the Fed starts actually cutting interest rates. But once they start actually doing that, that's when you'll probably see the bull market really broaden out.
So talk to us about this, Glenn. Do you agree? And how do you balance capturing that growth while still protecting the income that you'll need over the next 20 to 30 years?
When I was growing up, my mom used to tell me, consider the source of the information. So if there was a bully in school and he was being obnoxious and rude, consider the source of those insults. And sometimes those insults, after you consider the source, actually become compliments. Because if a bully is complimenting you, chances are they think you're like them. And that's something to be mindful of. So consider the source of the information that you're getting. And now we have somebody from Morgan Stanley whose job is to keep people invested. And so if your job is to keep people invested in the market, you may have an overly optimistic perspective or an overly optimistic slant on keeping people invested. And the fact is, with every sale, every trade in the market, every time someone buys, every time someone sells, you've got a lot of financial experts that have opposing views. When a stock gets sold, somebody thinks it's going to go down and somebody thinks it's going to go up. So there's always difference of opinions. So this is where, with all the difference of opinions out there, that's what can muddy the waters for us. And that's what makes it hard to decide, are things really going up? Are things really going down? Because I hear so many conflicting views, which there will always be. So this is where the information that we're getting from whomever the source is, we have to consider who's providing the information. Is it the bank that's providing information where they say, you should get into a CD? Is it Morgan Stanley that's providing information that says you need to get into the stock market? Is it your brother-in-law that says, you know what, we should take our money and bury it in the backyard? Right. So yeah. So we have to consider the source, gather the information, and increase our own financial education so that we can make a decision for ourselves. And that's the point. My job isn't to just tell people what they should do or tell people what they want to hear. My job is to give people a better education so that they can make better decisions for themselves. And that's best done when you're able to have a comfortable conversation with somebody without the concerns thinking about, well, what's this person's spin? What's their end objective here? What are they trying to sell me? And I take my fiduciary responsibility, not just a legal fiduciary, but a moral and ethical one. Because I want to be able to put my head on the pillow at night knowing I gave the absolute best advice and provided the most applicable information as possible. And that's what makes me sleep well at night.
Yeah.
Because it's very empowering when people are able to get the information they need to make better decisions for themselves.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Manumit Podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Investment advisory services offered through Jabez Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities offered through Glenn Johnson, Connecticut Insurance, license number 4628409. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Jabez Financial, LLC. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Jabez Financial, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Jabez Financial, LLC is licensed in your state, please call 860-390-0093.